If you've ever wanted to run a sandbox campaign, but you're afraid your players will just wander around aimlessly, you're not alone. Most new game masters avoid sandbox play because they think it means chaos, but it really doesn't. Today, I'm going to show you how to give players a real sense of freedom without losing structure, momentum, or your sanity. Hello and welcome to the Bearded Nerd Podcast, where I help new players and game masters learn, play, and grow their love for tabletop RPGs so that you can spend less time learning and more time playing. The word sandbox sounds intimidating, and oftentimes new game masters hear it and think that there's no plot, there's no direction, or it's just endless prep. And that's not what a sandbox actually is. A sandbox campaign isn't a lack of structure. In fact, it's a different kind of structure. But today, we're going to break down how to run a sandbox game that feels open, engaging, and alive without overwhelming yourself as a new GM. With that being said, let's dive into this episode of the Bearded Nerd Podcast. First and foremost, what does a sandbox campaign actually mean? What is it? What would it look like? Well, a sandbox campaign means two things. One, that the world has ongoing problems and plots. And two, the players choose which ones to engage with. It does not mean that there isn't a story, that there are no stakes, and that there is no direction. The difference between that chaotic feeling and a sandbox play is that in a chaotic campaign, nothing is anchored. But in a sandbox, the world is moving whether players act on it or not. Because of this, oftentimes new game masters and dungeon masters feel that a sandbox campaign can be scary. They often worry about if the players will be having fun. Are they going to ignore everything? Or if they are overwhelmed with the lack of prep for a specific scenario. But here's the secret. Sandbox campaigns don't necessarily require more prep. They require a clearer moving part. They don't necessarily require a scripting of sorts, but they require you to manage forces and to maneuver certain aspects of the plot. And this can be overwhelming, especially for new game masters or directors or dungeon masters. But here's the thing. You can focus on the three pillars of a controlled sandbox. The first pillar is factions with clear goals. The second one, visible stakes. And the third one is escalation. With factions, I like to focus on this because instead of plotting a scene, you're defining who wants something, what are they trying to achieve, and what happens if no one stops them. It's like a cheat code for writing its own story. For example, a merchant guild wants to monopolize trade. Well, what are they going to do to attain that goal? They may do X, Y, Z, and that's dependent upon your story. Or maybe there's a cult who wants to awaken some ancient being. Well, who's that something, or who's that ancient being? What are they trying to achieve, which is awakening the ancient being? How are they going to do it? And what happens if no one stops them? As you see here, the world starts to gain momentum. So again, establish your first pillar, which is creating a faction or many factions with clear goals. And bonus, if a faction has a rival faction that has opposing views and values and morals, it creates a little bit more tension and drama where the players can interact with the world in a deeper way. Second, creating visible stakes. The players should not wonder what matters. You should show them. If the cult wants to awaken something ancient, they need to see burned down villages because the cult is going through hell and high water to achieve their goal, or protest in the street because the merchant guild is trying to monopolize trade, or even increase taxes because a noble wants political power and they're manipulating the world around them. When those stakes are actually visible, the players are going to naturally choose which side of the story they want to explore and tell. And then third, the escalation. That third pillar is when the players cannot ignore it. It just grows and grows and grows, and then things happen. It's not a punishment. It's just realism, right? So if you as a player are ignoring a potential threat, that threat is going to progress. And if that tension boils over, then the natural progression is whatever the result the dungeon master chooses. Again, escalation creates a narrative without railroading your party or forcing them to choose a particular path. Now, with all that being said, how do we prep a sandbox session or even a campaign? Before each session, you need to answer 3 questions. What is each faction going to do at this moment? / what is each faction doing right now? Second, what problem is closest to exploding or boiling over? And what will change if players do nothing? That's it. You don't really have to prep every location. You don't have to prep any specific NPC or a list of NPCs. In fact, you can use random locations and random NPCs. But what you have to do is prepare for the consequences or the actions that will occur if something's chosen or not chosen. And oftentimes, GMs will think, am I guiding these players? Am I railroading them? No, that's not it. Railroading removes choice. Guidance is clarifying the stakes. If the city is burning, that's not railroading. That's just information that's present to the players. The players can still walk away, but now that choice feels meaningful. And oftentimes, GMs will avoid offering too many hooks or often avoid feeling or making everything feel urgent. And that's good. What I would highly recommend as a game master is to avoid these 4 sandbox mistakes. Number 1, offering too many hooks at once. From there, making every option equally urgent. Not every option is going to be top of the list. There are going to be priorities within the game that your players are going to want to make. 3, keeping the world static. Don't keep the world static. It's going to ebb and flow, and that's okay. And lastly, prepping entire continents. You don't need an entire kingdom. If you want to do that, great. But start out small. Just a town, 3 factions in the town, or 3 quote-unquote different ideals, right? It could be the farmer, the blacksmith, and the mayor. That's, in a sense, a faction. They all have different views and ideals and that contradict each other maybe. But start out small. 1 town, 3 factions or 3 opposing ideas, and 1 escalating problem. And then expand it as needed. Sandbox campaigns, though, don't remove structure. They relocate it and they create a structure within that is essentially based upon goals, consequences, and escalations. If you're a new game master, you don't need a sprawling world. You just need moving pieces. If this episode helped you feel more confident about running an open campaign, share it with a GM who's afraid that sandbox play means chaos, or they're just afraid to run a sandbox campaign. And if you want more beginner-focused tools for building confident campaigns, check out the show notes for more resources and guides. Until next time, y'all, build living worlds, trust your players, and as always, folks, keep gaming.